Okay, guys. Looks like you've arrived here because possibly you're seeing what you're seeing on the screen here. You've got your overdrive light blinking. You've got a service or check engine light on your 2000 Excursion or other vehicle. This seems to be a common problem across multiple vehicles, but especially Fords and Ford trucks and Excursions when you look at the overdrive light blinking problem. Again, if you're here, your heart is probably in your stomach right now because you're thinking, I'm going to have a lot of costs coming at me in terms of what I think this may be. If you've had this problem and not figured it out. So first things first, on the left hand side, what you'll see are codes that I was able to diagnose using a diagnostic tool after I got this same experience. I got an overdrive light blinking, I got a service engine light, and I did some diagnostics. But let's come back to that. Just follows away for a sec. But first, I want to talk about what you may be experiencing so that this ho- what should be this hopefully quick fix for you will work. But I think you will need to have some of the same symptoms in order for it to work properly for you. First and foremost, for me, um, I took my truck out and I went to a trailer that I'm intend to tow with this truck. And the lights and all that stuff had not been working in the truck before because I didn't have a inverter. So what I did is I went and got a cheap inverter from Home Depot that went into the cigarette lighter. And yeah, laugh at me now. I tried with that inverter to power that entire trailer, the lights, the winch, all that stuff. And as you can imagine, the inverter went crazy. But I figured, okay, fine. The truck was running fine. I turned the truck off. I turned it back on. No problems. Everything seemed perfect. Um, that night, I was trying to go to an event, and I figured, okay, I'll take my toy to it because it's my toy truck. I love it to death in terms of a project. So I was going to, go show it off. So anyway, I got in that night to drive it, turned it on, and put it in gear. And the first thing I noticed, I was hitting the gas, and it was kind of sputtering and popping as if, it was out of tune or the injectors were clogged or something weird was going on. So I'm thinking, okay, all right, well, I'll just drive it. Maybe I put some bad gas in there. So anyway, I put it in gear. I'm sitting on a driveway with an incline with the truck facing forward. And it's barely moving forward. I mean, it's kind of just rolling down the driveway, and it's revving up as if the transmission is completely slipping. So that scared me, and I'm have almost in the street, but I hit the brakes and stopped it. So I put it in reverse, thinking, "Oh God, this thing is going to be stuck in the middle of the driveway and or the sidewalk, and my neighbor's going to be complaining." So anyway, for whatever reason, it rolled. It was able to go in reverse. Well, at the time I didn't know what it was, but now I know that with this problem, they will still go in reverse, but they're more or less in limp mode. And so it barely did that. It barely moved forward. It just seemed like the whole transmission was gone. So, I sulked a little bit and went on to my event in another car. But the next day, I got enough courage to go out and, be a little bit more daring and see if I could roll it or move it. And sure enough, I put it in drive and it barely got out of the driveway and into the street. But, I had some comfort in knowing that it would at least go in reverse. So once I got it in the street, I had read a couple of articles and it said, hey, some of the symptoms are you still can drive in first or second. So I put it in second, I think. And yeah, it started rolling under its own power without me pushing the gas. But when I pushed the gas, it started slipping like crazy to go forward. So I'm like, wow, thing is really messed up. So I was able to get it around and have it limp around back to where it needed to be, where I could back it in. And so I put it in reverse, and even reverse was a little shaky. It was like, between bad tuning and transmission slipping. So I figured all heck had broken loose with this thing. So anyway, I got it back in the driveway, and went back in the house, started soaking about the mounds of money that I was going to have to spend in replacing the transmission. So I said, all right, well, let me go and see what these errors are. So again, just like you're seeing there, the overdrive light is blinking. I've got a service engine light, and I said, all right, well, it's just old enough where it's got an OBD2 port, so maybe I can connect something to it and figure out what's going on with it. So I went and got a diagnostic tool, the Innova 5410, if you need to buy one, and plugged that up. And the codes that you see there on the left are the codes that got thrown up. Now, don't pay attention to the heater errors. There's some work I still need to do to fix those. But the ones that scared me the most is the solenoid, as you can see there. And what you're not seeing is a torque converter error that's also there. So I got it all. It was like a Christmas tree for transmission problems. And the transmission acted as if it was not happy. Um, So anyway, as you'll see here in this particular diagram, all these figures and numbers started rolling through my head in terms of what it's going to cost me to replace whatever part I start with first, whether it be the solenoid pack in the transmission, the torque converter, or the transmission itself. I mean, either the part was expensive and the labor was okay, or the part was kind of expensive and the labor was on par with the most expensive part, or the part was expensive and the labor was going to be expensive. But in any case, if you're kind of soaking like me, then hopefully this news will be good news for you in terms of how to actually fix this, or at least try one more thing before you go and talk to the transmission people. That's the other thing. Before you start calling around and talking to people who quote unquote know this stuff, I'm not saying the transmission people don't. I think they're good people, but I think they're focused in on a particular set of issues that, hey, it's in their wheelhouse in terms of how they make money. So again, nothing against them, but I did call a couple people, and in some cases the fangs came out and they said, yeah, bring it to us and we'll figure out what's wrong with it. And hey, there'll be a base charge for that. Well, you can imagine that I wasn't in a hurry to do that. And then there were others who didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I mean, we are talking a 20-year-old 2000 Excursion, so people didn't want to touch it, or if they did, they were like, "Look, we're gonna charge you a premium to do the diagnostics." You name it, I heard it. So once I kind of got that bad news, I started saying, "Well, look, I'm going to do some more research online to see if maybe there's something I'm missing." And sure enough, I ran across this old guy who his friend had gone through some of the same stuff, but he got way far down the path than I did in terms of the amount of money he had spent to troubleshoot this. As a matter of fact, by the time he was done, he had a whole new transmission. He had all new parts in that transmission, and everything. And the problem still reared its ugly head. So the buddy, as I'm looking online, said that, he's asked him a series of questions because the buddy trusted him. And, hey, have they done an electrical analysis? He said, yeah, they said they definitely did that. Have they done, have they looked at this? Have they looked at that? And he said, yeah, they looked at all that. So he's like, okay, well, I guess you're in good hands because they've done all that. But by the time he had spent all that money and the problem still wasn't fixed, finally the buddy just dropped it off with him. And what he did is he started doing a really deep electrical analysis where, he used an ohmmeter and a few other tools to look at the electronics. And, initially he didn't find anything. He said, yeah, I guess they're right. But then he started looking, around certain areas, and, questions started happening. Some plug connectors and everything else weren't quite doing what they were supposed to do. So that leads us to where we are now in terms of my issue, because I took that and said, well, okay, here is a problem. All of this happened at once. The car was running perfectly. I mean, when I say perfectly, that car or that truck runs probably better than most new cars when it's running the way it's supposed to run, because it purrs like a kitten. I don't know if you guys own a 2000 Excursion or the Excursion line and you got one running well, the V10s, or even the diesels, but they are excellent cars if you can get them running good. So anyway, I was thoroughly impressed with how this thing was running, and it was just a shock to me to see that it would just all of a sudden start doing all this. So in any case, I probably let the cat out of the bag pretty much already, but that kept me digging. So I kept digging and saying, this isn't just a mechanical issue or some catastrophic failure. This has got to be something that got tripped or something that it's not happy about as a result of possibly me over surging the line or doing something else weird. So anyway, I started looking around, and what you're going to see right here is a fuse box diagram. Now, the first one I'm going to show you is right here is the internal fuse box, meaning inside the passenger compartment. There are a series of fuses inside here that might raise questions to you, but for this particular issue and the way I've just described it and all the symptoms I've described, where you'll want to focus is the fuse box that's underneath the hood. So on the driver's side, if we're talking about a 2000 Excursion, it's on the driver's side, and I think 1999 and 2000, maybe even up to 2003 or 4 Excursion and Ford Super Duties. Look at your own diagram for your car. Matter of fact, 90 I think 99 to 2000 on Excursion, the fuse box are the same, but 2001 and beyond, they moved the fuse location about to tell you now to another fuse location. So look it up if your Excursion is newer than mine, meaning a 2001 and above. But what you want to find, in my case, if you got a 2000 Excursion, is location number 19. Now, location number 19, and I'll put a picture right here. Okay, it's right there. Okay, so if you're facing the let's say you're at the front of the truck and you're facing toward the driver's seat from the front of the truck, then the location number 19 is on the top left inside that fuse box. Now you'll see a wire on mine. I've got a bag lift system for towing on mine, and the company who installed it put it on that particular fuse for some strange reason. And that was the other thing that tipped me off to the fact that that might be the problem, because my airbag leveling system, when I would turn on the truck normally, would turn itself on. So I had a eureka moment to say, wait a minute, all this time I've been turning it on, it has not been turning on. So anyway, by this time you probably figured it out. The cat's out of the bag. That fuse location number 19 is listed as, when I looked at my source for that fuse, it listed an older name for that fuse, and it kind of threw me off. As a matter of fact, the first source that I looked at for this didn't even have it listed correctly. They had it listed under the wrong name. So be careful of your sources if you look at your fuse locations. Make sure you double check it. So anyway, I'll show it right here. The source I went to, the second source, had the actual name of that location, and it had the old transmission name. Instead of the 4R100, it had the older transmission name there, and Higo or something like that, as that location and what it powered. And so after I looked at it again, I said, that's got to be the location. But anyway, I went on to look at another information source, and sure enough, they kind of had the same symptoms that I had, and they changed that location, and they seem to not have a problem. So make a long story longer, I went out to the truck, pulled that fuse, looked at it, and it looked as if it was burnt a little bit. So I found another 20 amp fuse and plugged that in, turned it on. Sure enough, my airbag system started working. The overdrive light stopped blinking, and I put it in gear, and it drove like a brand new car. So again, whatever vehicle you happen to be driving, these codes are pretty much universal. They aren't necessarily isolated to just Fords. The difference with Fords is that overdrive braking light, which I think is common in Fords, to let you know that you've got a transmission problem. If you happen to be looking at this for another car, and or the cars that I just mentioned or truck that I mentioned, the first thing you should do is do a troubleshooting of your electronics all the way up to the fuse that controls your transmission and other PCM and modules that control the car. Do that first. Don't pass go, don't collect $200. Make sure you do that troubleshooting, especially if everything happened at once. If it is something that gradually happened, your transmission starts slowly slipping, you may have another problem. The other tip off point for me is, when I looked at the transmission fluid, the previous owner had taken immaculate care of this truck, and the transmission fluid was extremely clean. It was almost if it had just been changed. That kind of scared me because I thought, okay, if they just changed it, then man, whatever is happening here has got to be catastrophic. But again, once I kind of figured it out, the problem, I said, okay, all this makes sense. The previous owner did as I thought that they did, which is took good care of it. It's just that I was an idiot and connected it to a source that probably surged it. And it may, in fact, have actually surged the transmission solenoid block. I ended up changing that and ended up costing me like $600 with parts and other stuff. I did it myself, which you'll see in my other video. Um, that may have still been the problem, and that may have been what caused the fuse to break. Because when I connected everything, turned on all the electronics, all that, it didn't blow the fuse again. So again, remember at the top of the story, I talked about that trailer that I connected to with an inverter in woefully the wrong way. So that may have surged the entire system, and actually that those other error codes that you saw there may be related to other fuses that blew or took time to blow by the time I got home from where I was, and started the car again. So again, hopefully you guys don't think this is too long-winded. I just wanted to give you all the symptoms so that if your vehicle's having those, you won't spend the money that I did or the initial source that I looked at, where I think he spent like $2,000 to find out that it was a $2 fuse that was causing the problem. So let's go through this again. If you're driving your car, it seems perfect, really fine. It's not slipping. You've done your maintenance. Your transmission fluid is not dirty or horribly unkept. And all of this just starts happening once, and you get this Christmas tree of error codes. First things first, do the troubleshooting on the electronics. Once you have determined for sure that it's not a fuse. I got lucky that it was just a fuse. The other gentleman had to do a lot of other troubleshooting through the entire electronic system to figure out what the problem was. And I think he ended up replacing the fuse box itself in the capacitor compartment. But before you pass go, find yourself a competent electronics person who's familiar with the ohm meters and those things and schematics to make sure that you're troubleshooting electronics. It could be that. But if it's something that's gradual, that's been happening, and you haven't been taking care of your transmission, then you may have another problem. Go look at my other video about how to change the transmission control solenoid or block. And again, if you're dumb like me and you surge the system, then you may have in fact surged your solenoid and still need to change it. But do this first, and you may save yourself a lot of money. I probably could have spent $2 first versus what I did spend to troubleshoot the problem. All right. Hopefully this helps you. If it does, give me a thumbs up. I'm just getting started. I really, really like my X, is what I call it, which is my Excursion. I've been in love with that car that truck since it came out. And I just recently added it to my stable of cars to pull my race car. So I started this channel because I really love this truck, and I don't intend to get rid of it ever. So we'll learn and grow together about how to keep and maintain these things. Because again, at the end of the day, it's a 20-year-old truck, and so parts and service are getting scarce. People don't want to work on them, so we're going to have to get good at dealing with our exes, as bad as that sounds. But if you like yours as much as I like mine, then we'll get to ride together on maintaining them and hopefully help each other. So again, if you like this, sorry it went long, but I see other sites where people aren't very detailed. If I'm not the guy for you because I talk too much, my apologies. But if you got some help out of this, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up. I'm just getting started. Send some of your friends if I save you some money. Maybe do a donation. Or at least I'm trying to help us all, in which case we'll help each other. So thank you for watching if you watched this long, and we'll see you next time.